So I think, look, there are two ways you approach a launch. And I'm talking about the absolute beginning, right? So right
Yes,
now,
yes.
let's say my team is working on figuring out 2028, 2029, 2030. Everything that we want to launch till 2027 is already in the pipeline, right? Whether they will launch or not is a different conversation because a lot of other factors play into play. But what we want to launch, we already know. So let's say you're starting to plan a launch, right? There are two approaches to it. The first approach is identifying a market gap. Okay, you decide the market based on the capabilities of the market to absorb a new product. So, for example, let's say uh, let's say you want to launch a bag, yeah, a beautiful handcrafted bag from Shantiniketan, and you want to, yeah, and your startup wants to do that. So then the question that comes in that where is the market for the Shantiniketan bag that I want to launch? Okay, that is the first. That's one way of it, where you know exactly uh, what is the product that I'm trying to sell, and what does it do. So when, for example, my R&D team comes and tells me, Banjo, I've got this great idea for this toothpaste, which will probably not only take care of cavities but almost give you fangs like Dracula. Then the first thing that I need to figure out, who in this world would want fangs like Dracula, right? So that's the starting point of knowing very well what the hell does your product does, and then finding an audience, community, market to figure that out. Yeah, so that's number one. Second is a lot of our day jobs, which is basically saying that the market needs an empty point. Yeah, so let's put it this way. Apple Watch was one of the first famous watches to launch, right? And which is a digital watch. It costs a lot, significant. It's almost like a medium luxury product. So then a lot of the brands, especially out of China, said, how do I ensure that there is clearly a market of things like Apple at the base, and there are markets like uh, we can go even higher or we can go lower. So then the question starts happening is, do we want to go higher than the market incumbents? Do you want to go lower than the marketing incumbents? And whichever direction we choose, what does it need for my product to have? And then you start making that product. Yeah. So I'll give you a classic example before even Apple came and when it was Nokia's heyday. Um, let's take Micromax and I don't know how many of you remember Micromax, but let's take Micromax and let's take a brand called Vertu, right? So Nokia was around 70% of the market business. Vertu was a company which started and said, I will make super luxury phones. And Nokia finally bought Vertu, I think, or it was a startup within Nokia. I don't exactly remember, but ultimately it went to Nokia. So Vertu's entire thing was that I will give you a phone, but this phone will have crystals and diamonds and I don't know what, right? Because phone had become a fashion statement. So Vertu became the phone that celebrities wanted to carry on their red carpet, right? And they didn't need to sell 20,000 of them. They needed to sell only 200 of them in order to make their money and profits, right? That is the first, that's when you go to the top. Micromax said, I will give you the same feel, touch, etc. as a BlackBerry does, and BlackBerry was out of reach for most Indians. But they said, I will give you a BlackBerry at an Indian price, right? And that's what made Micromax such a huge name in India during the early 2000s, late 2000s, right? So that is the second way where you start entering, thinking about, do I see a gap in the market? And is there a way I can enter that gap? Right? That is one of the big questions. So, India, for example, one of the gaps that we always keep on seeing is food. Indian food is still organically, no, no, sorry, organic in a different way. Indian food is not A, industrialized, B, branded. 90% or 80% of the Indian food industry is still loose, which is sold in your market, in your neighborhood stores, or by a brand that is very, very local. Is there a place for anyone to make a significant difference in that particular food? The answer is absolutely yes, right? So I think that is the kind of question that you have. One of the things, for example, and because we were talking about food, there is
We
no
have,
right
by
or
the way,
wrong
we
to
have
start.
many food startups here. Arun himself is one of the big thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, please
So
continue.
yeah.
Sorry.
So one of the things, like, and I think if you're working food, you will obviously know about Licious, right? Licious
Yeah.
saw that the issue was that the hygiene of all the butcheries and the chicken things in India was always a suspect. So they went into the entire thing of, okay, we will provide hygienic meat, right? And that's a great story to say. The struggle they always will have, at least till Indians completely change their behavior, the freshness will always be a question.
Yes.
Like even today, my dad loves to go and buy his patha from the guy he has brought the mutton for the last, I don't know, 40 years, and they know each other, they have trust. Even if the place is
And
not
he
the most
knows that he will get the
hygienic,
Kochi Patha.
and he will get know his kochi pantha with mete, so all of that works. Now the point is that a challenge that you are willing to solve? The answer is yes, you can do. Like, so that's the thing. So I think, just to bring everything together, if you're trying to start and you think, so there are two things you need to absolutely have. First is the product market fit. What product and which market, and are they in synergy, right? Now